What young girl, if only for a fleeting moment, hasn't dreamed of this?
In the 1980s, Laurie Marsden was a top model living in Europe.
Being the it girl, treated like a princess, a living doll. Like Giselle, Heidi, Kate, top models who make millions of dollars a year prowling catwalks and posing in the pages of Vogue.
Lady Gaga, the singer, admits she adores the beauty of animals in fashion. She even asked the press to credit an infamous real fur coat designer, Hermes.
Ralph's talent beyond creating beautiful things is his talent to recognize people.
Ralph Lauren's clothes don't come cheap, but women we spoke to say they're paying a far higher price. Workers at one South Indian factory which supplies the label earn as little as $3 a day.
We're not given time to drink water. We're not even given time to use the bathroom. We barely get time to eat lunch.
It's a body business. The reality is they can't let themselves go.
Which is why these girls are on a bare bones diet. And for 16-year-old Haley, it's egg white.
This usually keeps me pretty full. I have this with like a glass of orange juice in the morning.
I put off college to do this. It's my future now.
I just think that's really unethical and just they're super uneco-friendly. There's so much waste produced, like chemicals in their clothing as well as like air pollution.
Marsden claims Murray told her she'd be a star, but then she says at a house party he attacked her.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me here, Lavender here, and today I'm doing another political anti-capitalism activism topic. Today I'm doing a deep dive video of the fashion and the textile industry files, a deep dive into this, capitalism, fast fashion, pollution, sex trafficking, true crime, etc. So let's get started in this video. Before we get started, these are YouTube videos on my channel that relate to this topic, if you'd like to check them out as well, so yeah. In the the textile industry and the fashion industry is worth over $40 billion, and in 2019 the fashion industry generated $2.5 trillion in global revenues, making it one of the largest industries in the world. The industry now produces over 150 billion clothes each year. Fashion means different things to different people, a way to express their individuality, culture, religion, or creativity. Fashion has been used throughout history by sections of society to get themselves set apart from others and have their own style. By looking at what someone is wearing, we can identify things about that person, personality, their taste, and their wealth or social status. Textile sector rifled with exploitation, sexual harassment, and wage theft. Karl Marx and Frederick Engels provided the most influential critique of capitalism in history, outlining the link between capitalism and the exploitation of workers from the creation of surplus value. This results in the worker receiving only a small proportion of the product of their labor, while capitalists gain more and more wealth. Engels highlighted the gendered nature of exploitation in the fashion industry along with the extremely dire working conditions, while recognizing that the bourgeoisie are only able to wear the exquisite, expensive clothing at the expense of the health of the factory workers. British clothing manufacturers in one case have been forced to pay almost £90,000 to employees for non-payment of minimum wage. A letter from 6 women at a spinning mill in India describing the sexual harassment they face at work. They went on to describe how he touched them, the manager did, and if they refused to engage in his sexual advances, he would dock their pay salary. The letter has exposed the dark underbelly of the textile industry. India is one of the world's largest textile industry and garment manufacturers. Many of the workers employed in this $40 billion a year industry are trapped in debt bondage, face abuse. There is a constant use of vulgar language, and other male workers are also encouraged to seek sexual favors from us, the letter states. This is not just in one factory in India, it's all over the world. Sexual harassment runs rampant in the fashion industry. The cold, harsh reality of the overwhelmingly majority of models working in the fashion industry is that most of them begin work in their young years, teenage years around, make around $30,000 per year, and age out of their career by their mid-20s. The work is demanding whether they are modeling for catalogs, as clothing fit models, or on the runways. While women are the overwhelming majority of models in the United States, men notably control key aspects of the industry. They are designers of clothes, agency professionals who represent models, casting directors, and photographers. In order to be successful in the field of modeling, women know they must make all of these men happy and comfortable. One false move with these male, figures could spell the death of a whole modeling career, and they could be blacklisted. Models, therefore, are in extremely vulnerable positions as they attempt to navigate their careers. Men inquire about models' sexual history, have no problem commenting on their models' bodies in sexist ways, and feel completely free to ask models out on dates. Other men working in the industry, other models take off their clothes and pose nude without thinking twice. Men also exploit models by touching them, engaging in exhibitionism, or sexually assaulting them. But the majority of models working in the industry are not actually supermodels. That's actually rare. They are women attempting to do a professional job in the environment where men control major aspects of their careers. Many of them are sexually harassed in the process. Fashion models allege they were sexually assaulted by French fashion titan Gerald Marie. A former titan of the fashion industry is facing multiple accusations of sexual assault. 15 women had gone to the French authorities with allegations of sexual assault against Gerald Marie, who for decades was actually one of the most powerful men in the world of modeling. Marcin, a victim, was a top model in the 1980s. She arrived in Paris at the age of 19. Her agent was Marie, who at the time was one of the most powerful men in modeling history in the industry. Marcin claims that Marie told her she'd be a star. However, one time at a party he attacked her. He jumped on top of me and held me pinned down, she said. Marcin said she didn't go to the police at the time because she thought that she wouldn't be taken seriously because her accuser, the person that she's accusing, is a really powerful man. These accusations from the 15 women were brought to the French authorities on September of 2021. The alleged assaults occurred between the 1980s and 1990s. Balenciaga ad backlash and how capitalism is compliant in this and is a safe haven for predators. Balenciaga apologizes for kinky, disgusting, gross, and vile predatory ad featuring children holding in a kid's room a 18-plus kinky BDSM porn harness wearing teddy bears. Another Balenciaga ad appeared to show an interpret news article magazine from a 2008 U.S. Supreme Court case that upheld federal statutes on child's P-word that includes minors. Don't let this luxury $1 million, maybe even $1 billion company fool you. They go over in all the ads beforehand before releasing them. They are compliant in this. They know what they're putting out. They are totally compliant in this. They thought nobody would notice the papers in the ad, and people did. They knew what they were doing. Don't let them pretend like they didn't know what was going in the ad, because they did. CEO of Balenciaga's parent company owns a site that sells child CP mannequins. Modeling is often portrayed as a job which accrues wealth, fame, and prosperity. Again, most models don't make millions of dollars. The popular reality television TV show, America's Next Top Model, the Glamour magazine covers do nothing to dissuade this argument. While the industry is often attacked for eating disorders and alcohol abuse, its problems go far beyond that. When models can't make enough money, the agencies need extra cash. Some turn to a side business, sex trafficking. Several sources report that Jeffrey Epstein, the billionaire pedophile financier, received his victims from Jean-Luc Brunel, former owner of MC2 Model Management. The fashion model industry is known for their toxic diet culture resulting in eating disorders and body dysmorphia, whether it's models discussing what Pilates routine burns the most calories, or photographers sharing their rather problematic views on body diversity. The fashion industries have long been known to endorse and encourage exercise addiction or an unhealthy obsession relationship with exercise. On November 17, 2010, Anorexia Nervosa claimed the life of 28-year-old French model Isabelle Cordo, who spent the last years of her life publicizing publicizing the horrors of this disease. In 2007, Karl appeared on No Anorexia in an ad campaign by provocative fashion photographer Ovario Turunsky, shown above on a billboard in Rome. The images of her naked, grotesquely emaciated body shocked and revolted. The campaign intended to dissociate unhealthy thinness with the connotations of glamour sparked controversy, in part because some pro-anorexic groups and bulimia websites used its ads as thin-spiration, aka thinspo. On August 2nd, 2006, moments after stepping off a catwalk in Montevideo, Uruguay, 22-year-old fashion model Lindsay Ramos collapsed and died from heart failure believed to have been triggered by self-imposed starvation. Ramos' father reported that she had been subsidizing on a diet of lettuce and Diet Coke in anticipation of the show. The pressure on models is both female and male to be thin, and the result, pressure on girls, boys, women, and men to conform to an unattainable ideal is immense. Because models' professional success depends almost entirely on appearance, models obsess about their bodies. Yet the physical standards that models feel pressured to meet are unrealistic. A 2002 Centers for Disease Control report found that the average American woman is 5'4" and weighs 163 pounds. In 2006, it was estimated that the average female fashion model was 5'9" and 110 pounds. Models fear they will be replaced by a thinner alternative if they do not conform to the sample size, sometimes a doubled zero, which is incomprehensibly one size less than zero. Let's briefly talk about the problematic thing Heroin Chick model industry era. For the past year, there have been whispers about the Heroin Chick era returning. In fact, we're already seeing it on the runway and with celebrities. The Heroin Chick heyday, popularized in the early 1990s fashion, was rifled with glorification of extreme concerning thinness, anorexia, dark circles under the eyes, and an overall ill-looking appearance and presence. There's no denying that it was glamorizing both drug addiction and anorexia, as the name makes it obvious, stated as a fact. In fact, the term was even coined after the overdose of photographer Davy Cervantes. It may seem like the trend is taking over the fashion industry now is the same Heroin Chick from the 90s, but it's actually something more cloverly sinister. The latest update, deemed Succubus Chick, is tied into the wellness culture industry in complicated and confusing ways, where Kate Moss used to go clubbing all night and eat very little of her wafy look. Now celebrities are getting brochal fat removal, injecting themselves with the diabetic drug Ozempic, and drinking non-alcoholic drinks in order to look like Kate Moss. We're seeing the same results, only this time with the illusion of health and self-improvement. And now on to a little bit of the drug use that goes on in the modeling fashion industry. Model Erin Heatherton says she turned to bathwater meth over pressure to stay skinny. She was a Victoria's Secret angel from 2010 to 2013. A former Victoria's Secret model has revealed how she resorted to drug use over industry pressure to stay skinny and to lose weight. Erin opened up about her fear of losing her job over weight gain, as she turned to diet pills and injections. She added how each day she injected a hormone naturally produced during pregnancy called HCG. I started like a diabetic, injecting my stomach every morning. Racism in the fashion industry is widespread, from the CEO capitalist pigs treating people of color who are working in sweatshops like slaves to racist fashion brands such as Dolls Kill. Dolls Kill is a racist, fashion brand with a problematic history over the years. Cultural appropriation with native, indigenous headdresses. Goth is white shirts, racist shirts. Dead Girls Can't Say No t-shirts, discriminating against disabled people in wheelchairs, and then trying to say that never happened and gaslighting people. And the owner outright, saying, "Good job, police officers," during a Black Lives Matter protest. And, not only that, but fast fashion companies and brands steal people of color's, art designs and profit off of them. For example, in 2019, a black independent designer discovered Fashion Nova stole her crochet design. For an industry that relies so heavily on people of color for its success, it's disheartening and disturbing to see a lack of people of color representation when it comes to marketing. This lack of diversity is very apparent in fashion. We notice it in racist ads on the runways, and most importantly, we notice it in the boardrooms. This lack of diversity in leadership is the reason why brands continue to release insensitive ads and products. For example, H&M monkey ad and Gucci's blackface sweater. It is the reason why models of color are unrepresented on the runway. It's the reason why garment workers continue to be exploited. An African-American model at a Fashion Institute of Technology runway show said she was pressured to wear bizarre race accessories like monkey ears and oversized lips. I stood there almost ready to break down, telling the staff that I felt incredibly uncomfortable doing this and having to wear these pieces that were clearly racist. Amy Lefford, 25, told the Post. The fashion industry also relies heavily on the exploitation and oppression of non-human animals, from the production of goods using wool, fur, leather, silk, horns, and feathers. The industry uses animal body parts to create products. The process of turning non-human animals into fashion items to sell is a violent, labor-intensive process. The Animal Welfare Act, despite its name, provides no significant protection to farmed animals whose bodies are used for food, furs, or skins. While animals are tortured and murdered on a massive scale to produce these goods and products, some sheep breeds have been bred to the point where they can't shed naturally, and because of this, they have to be sheared. It's an animal welfare issue.
Let's talk about the genetic manipulation that has even made profit-driven wool production possible. Naturally, sheep in the wild grow just the right amount of wool to protect themselves from cold temperatures in the winter, and when it warms up in the summer, their winter coat sheds naturally, just like a lot of other furry, woolly, fuzzy mammals. But sheep raised for wool production, like the Merino breed, have not only been selectively bred to produce as much wool as possible, but so that their wool no longer sheds, but just keeps growing and growing and growing. That doesn't only cause discomfort for the animals, but thousands of sheep in the industry actually die of heat exhaustion from all their excess wool during hot summer months.
A lot of vegans seem to get this confused, though. And not just that, but also like the fur industry, each year around 100 million animals are bred and killed to supply the fashion industry's hunger for fur coats. Not only traditional fur coats, but increasingly real fur trim hooded jackets, the real pom-poms used on hats, beanies, gloves, shoes, and a range of other clothing and accessories. Animals bred for their fur, such as foxes, rabbits, raccoons, dogs, and minks, are confined in small, barren wire cages for their entire lives, and they suffer from emotional distress. When their pelts are at their prime and ready, before they are 1 year old, these animals are gassed in gas chambers or anally electrocuted with an electrical rod. The rich celebrities such as Kim Kardashian or Lady Gaga, for instance, support the fur and fashion industry and brag of their bougie capitalism lifestyles and the aesthetic online. Lady Gaga went on to say that animal fur is an art piece and was quoted saying, "You see a carcass, I see a museum piece of Del Resistance." In early 1900s, during the plume boom, many species of birds of paradise, particularly the most sought-after greater bird of paradise, were almost wiped off and almost extinct because of the fashion industry's use of using the bird's feathers to decorate hats. The feathers, 4 egrets to produce one adjuret, to a fact reflected in the sheer number of birds being killed. Science and statistics suggest that in 1902, 1.5 tons of egret feathers were sold, which according to contemporary estimates, and the statistics backing up this, calculates to 200,000 birds and 3 times that many eggs. By other figures, the number of birds being killed by hunters in Florida alone each year was as high as 5 million plus. The decorated hats with entire birds, often dyed in rich purples and blues, earrings made from the heads and beaks of hummingbirds, and a muff, a tippet made from the 2 heron gulls, a species of bird almost pushed to the brink of extinction in the 1900s. The public took increasingly interest in saving and doing conservation and restoring bird populations. Individual states passed laws regulating the hunting and collection of birds, eggs, and feathers. But migratory birds, those most impacted by the feather fashion trade, remained without protection at the federal level until the passage of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. Gucci was under backlash and under fire for having tigers in ad campaigns. Honestly, these capitalist brands need to stop using real wild animals in their ad campaigns because honestly, I really do think they're encouraging the exotic pet trade where rich, bougie, capitalist pigs buy animals because it's trendy and this, bougie capitalism lifestyle. This sort of ad campaign sends the worst possible message, which is tigers are disposable products to be used for capitalism and discarded at will. Animals are actually going extinct, such as the cheetahs in the wild because of this exotic pet trade. We don't need to be encouraging it. When it comes to pollution and environmental concerns and health effects when it comes to this fashion industry and the textile industry.
Now to something that will concern parents of young children. In a quirkily titled report on a very serious issue, Greenpeace says toxic monsters may be lurking in your children's closets. The environmental campaign group says some top fashion brands are using hazardous chemicals in kids' clothing.
Due to the ever-changing idea of what is in or out of style and clothing fashion trends, people are less likely to keep their items for a long period of time. By offering clothes at extreme low prices, companies like Shein and others encourage consumerism and have changed the nature of the fashion industry. No longer people are wearing the same coat for years. Some are using an item just for one night and then getting rid of it. Clothing is often made in such poor quality, contributes to the limited lifespans of these garments, and are seen as disposable, and a lot will end up at landfills. Harming biodiversity and wildlife, degrading land, and producing soil and water. In addition to degrading in landfills or being incinerated in a fire, fast fashion clothing has also become a notorious source of microplastics in marine environments, as the cheap plastic-based materials shed fibers that make their way into the oceans, along with pesticides, and create dead zones. According to the Alternatives Journal, the fashion industry has the highest use of pollution of fresh water, with 17 through 20% of industrial water pollution coming from the textile dyeing and treatment industry. Greenpeace has stated the dyeing process in the fashion industry uses 1.7 million tons of various chemicals in the entire process. Due to lack of quantity control and the need for quicker production in fast fashion, many factories lack the resources and time to efficiently manage their runoff. Therefore, these toxins and pollutants end up in our waterways. The fast fashion industry is a significant contributor to the climate change crisis, responsible for as much as 10% of the global carbon dioxide emissions. In 2015 alone, more than 330 million barrels of oil were used to make polyester, nylon, and other fibers. That's enough to fill more than 21,000 Olympic swimming-sized swimming pools. When it comes to sheep, wool is commonly blended with fibers derived from fossil fuels and coated with chemicals, further increasing the environmental cost of production and disposal of these garments. And American Airlines in the past issued stylish new uniforms for its flight attendants to wear. Pilots and representatives in those uniforms are making it very tough for a victim of capitalism to do her job. One of the employees is one of at least 3,000 flight attendants who, since the introduction of the new uniforms, has reported experiencing symptoms including respiratory problems, lightheadedness, fainting, rashes, and stop periods. Some flight attendants have been able to keep working through their symptoms, others have not. The fashion industry alone has access to over 8,000 chemicals that are known carcinogens that could cause cancer and hormone disruptors, all the while the airline continues to avoid directly stating the responsibility. If there's any kind of health issue with the uniform, and many flight attendants who are unable to work due to their symptoms have been denied workers' compensation by the airline because American Airlines keeps gaslighting the victims of capitalism. They won't take any responsibility for what they did. Environmental racism and fast fashion. The documentary River Blue explores fast fashion's industry's effects on major rivers in China, India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Zambia. The water in those rivers has become a public biohazard health crisis with a high incidence of cancer and gastric and skin issues afflicting those who work in the industry or live nearby in those river areas. The U.S. exports over 1 billion pounds of used clothing every year. Much of that winds up in the clothing markets in sub-Saharan Africa. These items will end up in a landfill or be sold in a marketplace at extremely low cost, which stifles the growth of the sub-Saharan African fashion economy. The influx of second-hand fast fashion items arriving in these countries has become a major problem. During the pandemic in 2020, the fashion industry had collapsed. Subsequent lockdowns around the world meant shoppers stayed at home. Retailers shuttered stores and billions of dollars of orders were canceled. Thousands of factories faced ruin and many closed either temporarily or permanently. In countries such as India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, tens of thousands of workers lost their jobs and thousands more were stricken ill with COVID-19 as it spread through cramped production lines where people dared to speak up about their unsafe working conditions. They were often met with brutality and threats. COVID-19 has shown us the reality of empty promises from these billion-dollar industries, retailers and manufacturers. The workers make them profits for years being exploited from the fruits of their labor, stolen wealth because wage theft is the biggest theft in the world, and the capitalist pigs are living this lavish, bougie, pro-capitalism lifestyle. When the pandemic started, they left the workers to starve. In a recent study, when interviewed 400 garment workers across 9 countries, the Workers' Rights Consortium found that even those employees who managed to hold down their jobs and still have a job reported a 21% decrease in income between March and August 2020, with monthly wages falling from $187 to $147. Garment workers in Bangladesh are now having to make impossible choices to survive. When they get full wages, 30% goes on housing. It's not a dream house, obviously. It's a 10 by 10 concrete room floor, sometimes with no window at all to see the sunlight. Losing 20% means they're substituting their food and their own children's food because they still need to pay the rent for where they live and pay the bills. Instead of having 70% left, they only have 50% left, and that means they are starving.
The Rana Plaza disaster, the garment factory collapse disaster that was totally preventable. This preventable disaster killed at least 1,132 people and injured more than 2,500 people. So this case has been featured in a number of TV and media and TV. It has been featured in Clothes to Die For in 2014, which is a small documentary. It also was featured in Rana Plaza, Let Not the Hope Die, which came out in 2014, and that's also another documentary. And there's also this one that loosely touches on this case. It is called The True Cost 2015 documentary on how fast fashion affects, the world and stuff. So yeah. So those are some of the documentaries and, that cover this true crime case. So let's get started into the background of this true crime case and what happened and all the events that happened leading up to, recently, as in 2021, what happened with this disaster. So let's get started into this video. So here we go, background. So this building housed a number of separate garment factories employing around 5,000 people, several shops, and a bank within the factory. The factories manufactured apparel like fast fashion brands such as Prada, Gucci, Versace, The Children's Place, and Walmart are just some of the examples of where this factory, was operating for. The head of the Bangladesh Fire Service and Civil Defense said that the upper 4 floors had been built without a permit illegally. Rana Plaza's architect, Masood Reyes, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, said that the building was planned for shops and offices, but not for factories or factory work. Other architects stressed the risks involved in placing factories inside a building designed only for shops and offices, noting that the structure was potentially not strong enough to bear the weight and of the heavy machinery, including all the people that would be inside the building. So one day before the collapse, a TV channel recorded footage that showed cracks in the Rana Plaza building. Later that day, the CEO, Savil Rana, said to the media that the building was safe and the workers should return tomorrow. Managers threatened to withhold a month's pay from workers who refused to come to work on that day. This is a very capitalist pig manipulation to force people to come to work in expense of their own lives. Many workers were worried. People did not want to go there because all these conditions and horrible things are being covered up at this factory. Employees that worked there said the cracks were very common down the walls of the building, and the building was making strange noises leading up to this catastrophic event that could have been preventable. These workers labored long hours in unsafe working conditions, earning an average of $50 a month. And their managers, aka the Porky, the cow's pigs, were threatening to withhold a month's pay from workers who refused to come to work. And the average earning was $50 a month. Think about that for a second. That's like pure gaslighting manipulation by the cow's pigs. On the morning of April 24th, there was a power outage and diesel generators at the top of the floor were started. The building collapsed at about 8:57 a.m., leaving only the ground floor intact. It was confirmed that 3,100 workers were in the building at the time of the collapse. One of the garment manufacturer's websites indicates that more than half of the victims were women working on low pay, along with a number of their own children who were in a nursery facilities within the building also. So not only do you have, workers being murdered, but you also have, cow's pigs putting children's lives at danger of their employees. Rana, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, I'm not really good at names, sorry if I mispronounce any names, said to the media that the building was safe and completely fine, and the workers should return to work the next day, regardless of all the media and news coverage. One manager of the factories at the Rana Plaza reported that Rana told them that the building was safe, knowing that it was not safe. Obviously, the building was not safe. They knew it wasn't safe, but they tried covering it up regardless anyways. Managers then requested the workers go back to work. As a result, workers also returned to the factories the next day, like I said. Just the decision by capitalist pigs to send wage slave workers who don't make that much money anyways back into the factories, they knowingly did that, knowing the conditions of the factories and the building and how much horrible shape it was in. And it was mainly due to the pressure to complete orders on time, because this is a fast fashion. Fast fashion is really bad. Putting lives at risk just for profits is very common of capitalism and the capitalist pigs and Porky. Because capitalism puts profits over human lives. That's what capitalism does. That's why we need to start talking about, the victims of capitalism more, as in true crime. When the building collapsed, here are the after effects on some of the victims that I looked up of this preventable accident. There was a 32-year-old victim who walks around with a crutch and suffers from terrible headaches. And this guy, it was just so sad, poor guy. And there was another victim, a 26-year-old woman, who now lives in her bed. She doesn't really get out of bed. She really spends her days now watching television and TV and sleeping thanks to the sleeping pills and pain medication that she is dependent on for her pain. She cannot read, she can no longer have children, and she can barely move, as her spinal cord was crushed and her pelvis in this accident. To go to the bathroom is an ordeal in itself, she said. A 28-year-old victim, who is also a widow with a 14-year-old daughter, says she cannot afford to send to school her 14-year-old daughter. Her kidneys were smashed in this accident, as was her right hand. Those are just some of the victims that we're going to be talking about in this, so yeah. The day after the Rana Plaza building collapsed, a case was filed against the owners of the building and the 5 garment factory operations inside of it. An arrest was ordered of Rana, the CEO of the building, and 4 of the owners of the garment factories operating within the building. 2 days after the building collapsed, garment workers and workers across, Bangladesh and across the world, across industrial areas, rioted, targeting vehicles, commercial buildings, and garment factories. The next day, leftist political parties demanded the arrest and trial of the suspects, the CEO, and etc. 4 days after the building collapsed, the owner of the Rana Plaza, Rana, was arrested on the Indo-Bangladeshi border by security forces. On the same day, a fire broke out at the disaster site, and authorities were forced to temporarily suspend it. During International Workers' Day, thousands of protesting workers paraded through central DK Kata, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, to demand safer working conditions and better pay, and the death penalty for the owner of the Rana Plaza building. A week after hundreds of survivors of Bangladesh's worst industrial disaster blocked a main highway to demand better wages as the death toll from the collapse passed 700 at this point. On August 30th, 100 days after the collapse of Rana Plaza, injured workers and family members of those who died there, along with workers' rights activists, inaugurated a memorial for the tragedy. A crude statue of two fists thrusting towards the sky grasps a hammer and sickle, which is the communism symbol. The police attempted to stop the resurrection of the memorial several times. It remains the only memorial dedicated to this tragedy. On August 29, 2017, the factory owner Samuel Rana was sentenced to a maximum of 3 years in prison by a court for failing to declare his personal wealth to the country's anti-graft commission. Rana and 37 others, including government officials, have also been charged with murder and could receive the death penalty if they are found responsible for the complex's collapse. As of today, just like the victims of the Bhopal, India gas disaster, compensations to families of disaster victims were still under discussion, and this case continues to evade justice.
A huge true crime case is the Triangle Factory fire deaths, remind us capitalism is a psychopathic, vile system that puts profits over the lives of everything, whether that's animals, people, or Mother Earth herself. And it doesn't punish the perpetrators of these pro-capitalism atrocities at hand. One of the most horrific tragedies in American history, manufacturing, and the textile industry occurred in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, the Triangle Waist Company. It was occupied about 27,000 square feet on 3 floors in a brightly lit 10-year-old building and employed around 500 workers in 1911 when the deadly fire spread with lightning speed through the New York City garment shop, resulting in the deaths of 146 people and injuring many more. Workers, mostly immigrant women in their teens and early 20s, attempting to flee, found jammed narrow staircases, locked exit doors, a fire escape that had collapsed in utter confusion. Unable to flee, some workers actually jumped from the 10-story building to a gruesome death down below. What had caused the fire? Many newspapers mostly focus on the factory's flaws, including poorly maintained equipment. Court testimony contributed the source of the place to a fabric scrap bin, which led to a fire that spread explosively, fed by all the lightweight cotton and oxygen in the factory. Like many other garment shops, the Triangle had experienced fires previously that were quickly extinguished and put out with water from pre-filled buckets that hung on the walls. What the Triangle loft spaces lacked, however, was an actual fire protection sprinkler system. Without laws requiring their existence, few owners and CEOs put them into their factories. 3 weeks prior to the disaster, an industry group had objected to the regulations requiring sprinklers, calling them cumbersome and costly and not worth it. The manager of the Triangle factory never held a fire drill or instructed workers on what they should do during an emergency or if there was a fire. Fire drills, commonly today, were rarely practiced until 1911. Factory work is often extremely hard, grueling, and dangerous, and poorly paid. Most of the workers killed in the fire were women in their late teens or early 20s. The youngest were 2 14-year-old girls. It was not unusual at the time, and even now, in 1911, for girls that young to work. And even today, 14-year-olds and even preteens can legally perform paid manual labor in the United States under certain conditions. And honestly, I think child labor is coming back. Honestly, with all the laws being passed, or trying to be passed recently. The United States tolerates child labor to a greater extent than many other countries. The owners dealt with fire hazards to their equipment and inventory by buying insurance, and the building itself was considered fireproof and survived the fire without structural damage. Workplace safety, however, was not a priority for the owners. Workmen's compensation was non-existent at the time. Ironically, the nascent Workmen's Compensation Law, passed in 1909, was declared unconstitutional on March 24, 1911, the day before the Triangle Fire. Sadly, the fire was probably ignited by a disregarded cigarette or cigar. Despite rules forbidding employees from smoking, the practice was fairly common for men. Few women smoked in 1911. The CEOs and owners of this company were charged with manslaughter. However, the owners were acquitted acquitted of the charge in December 1911, and in 1913, one of the owners was arrested for locking a door during working hours in the new factory, another atrocity. The Tringle factory fire tragedy has been recounted in numerous articles, books, films, and movies. Tringle, unlike the other disasters, became a rallying cry for political change at that time and is a major event that sparked the workers' rights movement. These are the victims of capitalism who died because of someone else's greed, and it's still going on to this very day.